Welcome back to The Contender. I'm your host, Congresswoman Erin Houchin. Today I'm joined by a very good friend and fellow Hoosier, Congressman Rudy Yakym. Rudy represents Indiana's 2nd District in the northern part of the state. He currently serves on the Ways and Means Committee, where he's helping shape tax policy that impacts families and small businesses across the country. We came to Washington just a few months apart, a few years ago, and we've been navigating Capitol Hill together ever since, fighting for Indiana values at the federal level. Well, thank you for being here, Rudy. It's great to be with you. I want to start by talking about how you came to Congress. You worked very closely with former Congresswoman, the late Jackie Walorski. I know that you had spent a lot of time on the ground in northern Indiana already working on behalf of constituents in many ways. Tell us about your story of coming to Congress and how it's shaped the way you approach your work here.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me on today. It really starts with my upbringing as a 4th-generation Hoosier, someone whose great-grandfather came over, settled on the east side of Notre Dame, worked at Studebaker building cars. My great-grandmother worked in the kitchen at Notre Dame. And then my grandfather, Rudy Sr., actually worked at Uniroyal. He ran the adhesives division there. So I come from a long line of working-class families. Even grew up in a home on the south side of South Bend, oldest of 5 kids, small house. There were 7 of us that lived there. We had 1 shower. And so it's the kind of house where if you wanted warm water, you had to beat everybody else to the shower. Or
Sharp elbows?
You had to rustle your way in there. So, or even, I think of a story like growing up when you were about to take your shower, if everyone else is in there, my brother and I, we used our ingenuity. We figured out how to shut off the hot water. So that
you ever flush the toilet?
So we had some left. But
Cold water.
It just reminds me of the great Hoosier spirit that we have. And those are the Hoosiers that I come here to fight for. Indiana's 2nd District is the RV capital of the world. We make 85% of the nation's RVs, and there are factory workers that walk in there every day. They work hard, and no matter what the challenge is, we just figure it out in the Hoosier state. And so having that business background, working in small businesses, helping people grow companies, understanding what it's like to just get up and go to work every day. We want the federal government to leave us alone. And those are the Hoosiers that I fight for. But having those deep roots back in Indiana just makes me, I think, well-versed in what it is Hoosiers need and want. And we try to travel all 11 counties back home in Indiana every month to the extent that that's possible and hear directly from Hoosiers and then come here to Washington and fight for them.
Yeah, that's what's fascinating to me. When we walk into the chamber, 435 members of Congress are representative of their districts. And that's the way the founders intended for us to come here and serve as representatives of the people back home. And you certainly reflect that in your service here. You serve on the Ways and Means Committee, which is one of the most powerful committees in Congress. I joke that it's second to Energy and Commerce, but we won't argue about that here. It's a very important committee to be on. We're proud to have you there. For people listening, why should that committee matter to everyday Americans?
I think back to last year in our Working Families Tax Cut. One of the things that we spent a lot of time doing is really just traveling all around the district and hearing from Hoosiers what was most important to them. We also, of course, heard from President Trump as he weighed in on the things that he wanted in that bill. And one of the things I'm really proud that we accomplished is a whole list of things that matter to working families back home. I think about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, tax relief for seniors. We delivered the largest child tax credit enhancement in the history of the country. So many things that we did really were targeted towards working families because if you can get an extra few $1,000s a year in your paycheck, money that you earned that you should be keeping in your paycheck, that's real money for Hoosiers. And so to be able to fight to lower taxes for middle-class families is something that we certainly did on the Ways and Means Committee. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to serve Hoosiers in that way.
That's great. And when we did pass the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, that was last July. Now Americans are expected to have historic tax returns this year. So we've touched on a few of the pieces that will matter most to families. There is also the pass-through deduction for small businesses that I'd like you to just comment on about how that will help businesses, how it will help them stay open and keep growing. That's a pretty important provision for Indiana small businesses. Tell us a little bit about the impacts of the pass-through deduction.
That's right. When I'm back home, for example, in Elkhart County, a good friend of mine, Danny Reynolds, who owns Stevenson's in downtown Elkhart clothing shop, He's someone who is very grateful for that pass-through deduction because the small businesses are taxed, little nuance to our tax code. They are taxed at the individual rates, not at the corporate rate, which is 21%. Because of that, they oftentimes end up paying a higher rate than corporate America. And I just don't think that's fair. And so with this small business tax deduction, 199A, it's something that allows these small companies to compete at a larger scale. And so they can keep more of their money. They can hire more people in Indiana's 2nd District to show up for work. And it makes it easier for them to build a business with the government taking a smaller percentage of their profits.
You and I also worked together on the Affordable Homes Act. Thanks for your support of that. I wanted to touch on that briefly because it is important to your district and manufactured housing. And then we also have the Repair Act, which is coming through the Energy and Commerce Committee, right to repair, and we work to get a provision in there to help support the RV industry. So some of the things that we're working on here, they're little things that are one piece of a bill here and there that really make a big impact back home. Can you touch on that a little bit?
That's right. In Indiana's 2nd District, we have a heavy presence of manufactured homes manufacturing. And because of that, when they're looking at how they are going to do the construction on the manufactured house, a lot of times they receive all these regulations from Washington, D.C. The problem that they were experiencing is that there were so many different federal agencies that were trying to regulate them. And on top of that, Erin, a lot of the regulations were conflicting regulations between agencies.
That's absolutely right.
It made it impossible for them to do their job. And so thanks to your leadership, we were able to help sign on to that bill, and you were able to get that bill through the House. And it's going to make it much easier for them because now there's only one federal agency under this bill that will have the authority to regulate them. And so it makes it much more clear and much more simple. When Hoosiers know the rules of the road, they can run fast. But what we can't have is the federal government coming in, interfering in the manufacturing process and giving them confusing and conflicting rules. And thanks to your leadership, we were able to help provide that clarity.
At least in one instance with the Affordable Homes Act, we didn't want to have multiple agencies telling manufactured housing producers what to do and how to do it. So we have provided clarity between HUD and the Department of Energy on energy efficiency standards, putting HUD clearly in the driver's seat, housing and urban development. And I think it will make a big difference. It's supposed to reduce the cost of manufactured housing between $10,000 to $15,000 per door. Very, very exciting piece of legislation that we hope to get through the Senate. But it's really credit to you for stepping up and supporting the bill and helping us through it because it is so important to your district too.
You're right. And the reality, Erin, is I think people underestimate how much cost is baked into something as a result of federal government interference and overburdensome regulations. And so the general perspective that I think all of us Hoosiers share is that the more we get the federal government out of the way, the better things get. So let's just get the federal government out of the way, let Hoosiers do their jobs and live their lives. And all of a sudden you see things operate more effectively and efficiently. You see costs come down. Because if you're someone in rural Indiana who wants to buy a new manufactured house, that extra $10,000 or $15,000 price tag might be the difference of you being able to afford it versus not afford it.
Absolutely.
So everything that we can do working together, fighting for Hoosiers to lower their costs by getting the government out of the way, I think it's a great thing.
And Republicans in general, we want to deregulate. And that is a really good point that you make. I mean, when we're just talking about some of these issues, about the tax code, about regulation on housing, about regulation on our vehicles, we want to have free markets and we want to have as little regulation as we can, maintaining public safety, of course. But the other side of the aisle, they seem to just want to overregulate. And we're still suffering from some of the overregulation of the Biden administration. Fortunately, House Republicans are working every single day, like on bills like the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, which you were a leader on, to the Affordable Homes Act, to make that deregulation a reality.
That's right. Joe Biden left us with such a mess in this country to clean up. And between President Trump and the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans, we're doing this piece by piece. I mean, some of it is there's new ideas that we have to go through with, but a lot of it is we've got to tear down a lot of the bad policy that Joe Biden left us with. And thanks to, again, people like you in the House, we're just going to keep doing it piece by piece, chip by chip, block by block, as long as Hoosiers continue to send us back to do this job.
Yeah, we're grateful. You're always amazing to work with, and so is your team. My team, I know, loves working with the folks that you have on staff.
And we're just down the hall from each other.
I know, we are. We're neighbors. We're literally neighbors. Is this the longest walk you've ever had to do an interview?
This was, I think we counted about 25 steps down the hallway.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
Very
Well,
fun.
it was a hardship, right? Well, I wanted to touch on something, just switching gears completely. We're celebrating America's 250th birthday, and Indy cars are coming to Capitol Hill. How excited are you for the race, and what do you hope to see when we have Indy cars storming the Capitol?
Yeah, when you see the Indy 500, which is something that I've gone to with my brother and my son for a number of years, it's one of these things where it just screams America. Like there's few things more American than a good old car race. And to see that coming to Capitol Hill representing the Hoosier state is something that I'm incredibly proud of. It's going to be in late August, and to see that coming here, I mean, I can't think of hardly a better way to celebrate America's 250th birthday than having an IndyCar race right around the national.
I'm so glad that Indiana is such a big part of the celebration. I mean, we have a story to tell with IndyCar racing, but it just makes me immensely proud of our state that we are going to be such a big part of the celebration of America's birthday.
Indiana is home to so many great Americans. And Indiana also at the national level, we continue to punch above our weight.
We do.
And this is just yet another
It's another
example of how we're punching above our weight. So I
That's
can't
right.
wait to see these cars ripping up and down Independence Avenue and Constitution Avenue as we're celebrating the 250th birthday of this country. This is the greatest country in the history of the world. There's no other place like it. There are so many things that you can say, only in America does this story happen. And to be able to celebrate that on the 250th, it's a moment I just can't wait to see.
Me too. So speaking of America 250, what's something about your district in particular that you would like to highlight for America's 250th birthday?
I would highlight the entrepreneurial spirit that we have in Indiana. In my district, again, we make 85% of the nation's RVs. We are the medical device capital of the world. 60% of the nation's knees, hips, and joints are made in my
Did you
district.
hear that? You probably have a hip. If you have a knee replacement or a hip replacement, it probably came from Rudy Yakym's district in Indiana.
We make, but we also have a lot of fun in the district too. You think about boats. I mean, a lot of the boats in this country, pontoon boats, for example, are made in my district.
They should call the second district the recreation capital of.
It
of the
really
world.
is. That's a great idea. We'll have to rebrand that. A lot of recreational activities, but then also we have a lot of hardworking farmers in my district who export their products all over the globe from Indiana's second district. And so, to me, the thing I would highlight and I would say is that the entrepreneurial spirit and the fighting Hoosier spirit is alive and well in Indiana's second district. People are proud of the products that they make in the district. It is the most manufacturing intense district in the entire country. Is Indiana's second district. And people are just proud to get up and go to work every day. And that spirit, that hard working class spirit is alive and well in the state of Indiana.
I love that. That's really great. It is a true reflection of the American spirit, and that's a great way to put it. Let's talk about the contender. So this podcast is called The Contender. It is our family motto: contend, work hard, have fun. I've told this story on many podcasts, but it boils down to contending for your faith, contending for things that really matter, and doing so in a way with a positive spirit, a positive attitude, working as hard as you can, but enjoying the journey. We often ask our guests to talk about someone who's been an example for you as that kind of a contender. You certainly fit that profile here in your service in Washington. You are a contender. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the podcast. But who is a person in your life that is a contender that sets that example for you? And tell us a story about that person.
Yeah, I would take you back to my grandfather, Rudy Sr., who we lost about 10 years ago. And when I was a child, I used to spend endless amounts of time with him, endless amounts of time at his house. And he had a place down the Tippecanoe River in Fulton County. And one of the things that he did in retirement, he spent his whole life working with his hands. As a matter of fact, at the end of his life, his hands were just all, beat up and roughed up. And he called them the hands of a working man, is how he framed it. And in his retirement, to make extra money, one of the things he did is he would put an ad in the newspaper and he would repair boat motors. he had in his garage, I mean, at any one time, anywhere between 20 and 50 boat motors that he was working on for people in and around Fulton County. And I'll never forget one time, he was an early riser, always up at 3 a.m. And when I would stay at his house, I would get up with him at 3 a.m. and we'd go out to the garage and go to work. One time he had a guy who responded to his ad, and he bought 2 boat motors over. One of them he wanted repaired. The other one said, this boat motor's trash. It was a Mercury 40 horsepower boat motor. He said, this one's trash. He said, when I put gas in it, I didn't mix oil in it, and so the whole motor seized up. It's junk. My grandfather said, well, I think I might be able to fix it. And the guy says, it's not fixable, sir. I ran out of oil, motor seized up. And my grandfather and I saw this guy, like they were getting into an argument with each other. And the guy said, no, I just want you to take it for scrap it. So my grandfather says, fine, I'll take it. Well, 3 a.m. one day, we get up, we go outside, we pull the cylinder head off the motor. And my grandfather makes this 6-foot breaker bar. We put it on top of the flywheel, and we start trying to rock this thing back and forth. We put some WD-40 in the cylinders. It took us about an hour, and about an hour later, we had the whole flywheel turning over, and the cylinders were moving again. We put the cylinder head back on, put new spark plugs in it, drop it in the water, and start it up.
Oh, wow.
And it runs like brand new. And I'll never forget what my grandfather did next. He looked at me and he said, no matter where you go in life, don't ever let anyone tell you it can't be done. He said, Rudy, you can do anything you want. You can go anywhere you want in life, but you have to start by believing in yourself. And don't let anyone stand in your way and say it's impossible. My grandfather was also a person of faith. Matthew 19:26 says that with God, all things are possible. I don't believe that things are impossible. I believe that the Hoosier spirit is alive and well, and no matter what we set our minds to, we can actually get it done. And that's a lesson I learned from my grandfather.
That's amazing. That might be in contention for the best contender story that we've heard. So that's a really great story. I think it certainly reminds me of the over, under, around, through, get it done no matter what. Don't take no for an answer, which is what you have to, that's the attitude you have to have here working on behalf of constituents.
No is a qualified yes.
Yeah,
Like find a way.
Find a
to
way.
get it
I always
done.
tell my staff, don't tell me no, it can't be done. Tell me how we can do it, or at least the why behind the answer. Don't just say no. Say, here's the explanation. Well, I love that. That's a great story, and certainly a testament to how you serve in Congress.
Well, thank you very much. And that story, it just reminds me of, again, the people that are working on those factory floors. You run into so many issues all the time, whether you're on a factory floor or you're out farming fields. You run into so many problems all the time that seem like it's impossible. But Hoosiers, we just figure it out and we get it done. And that spirit is alive and well, and it continues to be passed from generation to generation back home in Indiana.
Well, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for your friendship in Congress. Thanks for being a good partner I wouldn't say in crime, because but in the hard work that we have to do here. It's great to work with you.
Happy to do it. Thanks for your partnership. Thanks for your leadership, not just in the Hoosier state, but you're a leader in our conference. You're elected conference-wide as our conference secretary in the Republican Party, and we're grateful for your leadership, not just in Indiana, but in the entire country through your leadership role in the House.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you. Thanks for being on The Contender.
Thanks for having me on.
To all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe, share the podcast, and stay inspired. To contend, work hard, and have fun. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next time.